Thanks for joining us. I'm Sarah Massler-Donar. Wisconsin top Republican will not move to impeach Wisconsin Elections Administrator Meagan Wolfe. Assembly Speaker Voss won't consider action against Wolfe until after the conclusion of a lawsuit that seeks to clarify whether she still holds the position after the Senate voted along party lines to fire her. Senate President Chris Kapenga recently urged Voss to pursue articles of impeachment. Kapenga says her refusal to leave could rise to the level of corrupt conduct in office and qualify for impeachment. Voss has a different opinion, and that's a topic we begin with during my extensive interview with the Speaker. Take a listen. Speaker Voss, thanks so much for being with us this morning.
Happy to be here, Sarah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Senator Chris Kapenga, Senate President, has now called on you to pursue impeachment against Wisconsin Elections Administrator Meagan Wolfe. Will you take action in the Assembly?
Well, first of all, I don't believe that Meagan Wolfe is lawfully in her job. We know, look, I supported the creation of WEC almost 10 years ago, and we were very, very clear that it was a fixed term for a certain amount of time, and that if you didn't have a person who was renewed, it would go to JCLO for a new position to be filled. So that's what I really think we should be doing, is we should be advancing a new name. I believe the position is vacant because it did not have a new successor named. I think that's the most likely scenario. So the idea is we're not impeaching somebody who's in the job lawfully. They're not there. So I think that's what the Senate acted on. They didn't confirm her. So that's the action that we're going to follow.
So 5 Republicans in the chamber recently put forward a resolution that contains articles of impeachment for Wolfe. And a lot of these accusations contain some baseless claims about voter fraud. I want to read one of the articles for you. This is Article 1. Administrator Wolfe promoted and encouraged illegal alterations of absentee ballot applications during the administration of the 2020 presidential election in Wisconsin. Now, Wolfe did not authorize this. She serves at the will of the commissioners. A lot of these claims fall on the commissioners. Do you agree with any of the claims in these articles put forth by Republicans in the Assembly?
There is no doubt that major problems happened in the 2020 election. Things were done wrongly, and we need to correct them going forward. We have passed multiple bills. Unfortunately, they've all been vetoed by Governor Evers, so a lot of the problems still exist. I think we need to move forward and not focus all of our time and effort on 2020. That is in the rearview mirror. I want to make sure we have a good process going forward. I think that out of the 6 million people in Wisconsin, there is more than one person that could run the Wisconsin Elections Commission and do an exceptional job. So I think we need a new person that has the ability to bring new ideas and the confidence of the electorate to come forward. I think that'd be good for democracy. I think it'd be good for the entire system, and that's my hope that it'll happen.
But at this time, you are not going to move forward with any kind of impeachment inquiry into Wolfe.
Well, again, there's no need to do an impeachment because she's not there lawfully. I think we need to go through the existing process and not just be frustrated by the fact that the Senate's actions haven't seemed to work at this point. We need to follow the law and see what the actual rulings are from the court.
So you are going to wait for that court ruling to come down before taking action on anything?
Yep.
Okay. So on the topic of conversations involving impeachment, let's talk about Justice Janet Protasiewicz for a second here. Have you received a report from that panel of former justices that are investigating criteria for impeachment?
Well, it's really informal advice. I know that the left has tried to make it into some kind of cause célèbre. The amazing thing is, for the critics who say that we spend all this money on legal fees, almost 100% of the money is defending ourselves from frivolous lawsuits filed by activists funded by George Soros. So that's really why we end up spending a lot of money on these lawsuits. So it's another prime example that the justices are just giving me advice as to what I can do to make sure that I follow the Constitution.
But have they
have not given me that advice yet. No, I'm still waiting. I have to talk to them. I have not done that yet. But I think the most important thing for us to remember is that Justice Protasiewicz should recuse. Just take a scenario where somebody's running for local judge, and in the middle of running for local county judge, there's a murder in the town. And the judge begins by saying, oh, it looks to me like this person is totally guilty. Anybody who's not an idiot says this person should go to prison for life. Then they get elected and they sit on the case. I think most people would look and say there's no way that person can be fair because they prejudge the case. Whether or not the person is guilty or innocent, they have a right to an unbiased judge and a fair process. Well, Justice Protasiewicz has already prejudged the case just like the person would have had they told people that the murderer should go to prison.
But she has not said how she would rule on that.
She has prejudged the case by basically saying that everybody agrees with X, Y, or Z. That's no different than prejudging a case in any other circumstance. It's the basic principle of the law. If you think about the scales of justice, the entire idea is that she is blindfolded because you're supposed to have an impartial system. If somebody starts out a case by saying that certain things are obvious, they're not impartial. So I think that's clear that she needs to recuse herself. If she doesn't, the legislature will take the appropriate actions to make sure that the laws are followed.
You've indicated that the report would
It's
not
not
be
really a
made
report,
public.
it's just informal advice.
Okay, you've indicated that that advice would not be made public, so why shouldn't the public see that?
Well, it's no different than right now. People give me advice all the time. You know, people come in and lobby me on bills. Friends talk to me. I call people who are experts on topics and ask their advice on a bill that I'm going to take up or on a topic that I don't necessarily understand. It's no different. So, you know, every time you call a legislator, it doesn't become a public conversation. You don't record it and then release it to the media later, right? If you put it in writing, it usually is an open records request and you can have a public document. But I don't think that's why we'll have some kind of a formal report. If we do, and it's a public document, of course, we'll follow the law. But I think it's more likely to be informal advice.
Well, you're the one who announced this. You know, I'm sure you don't go around announcing all the time that somebody is asking for advice on a bill or you're talking to a lobbyist. So it was a public announcement, and now the public wants to know for somebody that they elected what these two former justices are saying.
Well, and we'll see once they give me the informal advice. I mean, we'll go through the entire process to determine what's appropriate. Like I say, it all starts with a very basic idea that Janet Protasiewicz should recuse herself. If she does what is common sense and is practical, then most of the rest of it falls by the wayside. It never even becomes a need to have discussions.
Democrats have criticized the timing of the redistricting bill that Republicans put forward. It's now passed out of the Assembly. If you think this is truly good policy now, why not support something like this back then?
Well, you know, the honest to God answer is sometimes you have to take a step back and say what's in the best interest of the state. You know, I think it's the job of the legislature to draw the maps. I think the maps that we have are perfectly fine, and they have met every single court test. It's a done deal. But I also know that we have a partisan Supreme Court who, if Janet Protasiewicz doesn't recuse, is going to do some kind of a judicial gerrymander, which is wrong for Wisconsin, and will create a whole additional set of problems that isn't right for Wisconsin. So this is probably the perfect time for us to say, look, each side has something to win and each side has something to lose by having a nonpartisan process go into effect. I thought, since it was introduced by Democrats in every one of the previous 10 sessions, that we would just adopt a version of the bill, which is the closest it can be to Iowa, and put it on the floor. There's no need for a public hearing. They've already talked about it. I mean, we've had referendums in half the counties around the state. You know, it's a cause célèbre, especially for liberals. So let's put it on the floor and take a vote. Well, then their hypocrisy began to show. We could not have, when we adopted 7 amendments to try to make it even closer to what they said they objected to, and they're still opposed. So the idea is they don't want nonpartisan redistricting. They want something that's going to guarantee that they have the ability to gain power. That's not what elections are about. I think we win elections
because...
Do
you see this bill or this effort as a way for Republicans to retain power?
No, I mean...
the same way?
No, because there's no guarantee how a nonpartisan map would go. I think we have better candidates. I think that's the reason we have won. Don't forget, we have districts that Tony Evers carried, that Joe Biden carried. Democrats don't. They only win in areas where they are highly concentrated because the crazy policies that they adopt don't actually appeal to independents and people across the board. Republicans have had the benefit of 10 years worth of elections where we reach across the aisle and we find ways to get Democrats to support Republicans. That's how we've been successful. So I have no concern that if we have a fair, nonpartisan process, that we'll have the same ability to retain majorities into the future. I guess Democrats are the ones that are now afraid of it. They want some kind of a jerry-rigged process where they have the ability to guarantee that they're going to get a majority because they can't do it fair and square. This is a fair process. It should be adopted. I don't know why they would say something for 10 years and then at the end, when they have the chance to get it, to say, no, it's not good enough.